Our story begins in the midst of a climactic confrontation, placing us at the heart of a battle that will not only shape the fate of the protagonists, but also determine the destiny of an entire world. Seated on his dark throne, the Demon King watches, surrounded by monstrous beings of grotesque and terrifying forms. Standing before him, one of our heroes steps forward with unwavering resolve. It soon becomes evident that this warrior is named Isaac, a swordsman of exceptional skill. Without hesitation, he launches into combat, cutting down the nightmarish creatures with fluid, precise movements. His mastery of the blade is undeniable as he effortlessly eliminates numerous enemies. Seeing an opportunity, he calls upon one of his allies to join him in the fight. Enter Chikara, a formidable warrior whose mere presence exudes strength. The two fighters coordinate their assault, charging at the Demon King together. However, they are met with an overwhelming response. A massive surge of flames erupts from the monarch, forcing them to retreat. With a voice filled with disdain, he reminds them of their insignificance before his might. Just as it seems the fire will consume them, a powerful magic barrier materializes, shielding them from harm. The spellcaster responsible steps forward. Aya, the team's sorceress. With a confident smile, she reassures her comrades that they are unharmed. Isaac, still catching his breath, acknowledges that he owes her one, while Chikara notes that even with the barrier, the sheer force of the attack was staggering. Before they can recover, unseen hands suddenly extend from the shadows, offering healing potions to Isaac and Chikara. The mysterious figure then steps into the light, revealing himself as Perot, another crucial member of their team. After quickly consuming the potions, the warriors turn toward their final companion, awaiting his signal. At last, their leader, Haruto, steps forward. Without hesitation, he launches himself at the Demon King, his power surging with such intensity that even their monstrous adversary is momentarily caught off guard. As the battle unfolds, the scene shifts. In another part of the world, the news spreads like wildfire. Word has reached the people that the renowned hunter guild, Byakuren, has achieved the impossible. They have vanquished the Demon King. It is revealed that for nearly 2 centuries, the portal that allowed these creatures to invade had remained open, an ever-present threat to humanity. Now, for the first time in 200 years, hope has been restored. News broadcasts celebrate the victory, hailing it as a momentous event. Reports highlight that Byakuren has defeated one of the 7 Demon Kings, an extraordinary achievement that will be remembered for generations. Soon after, the scene transitions to the bustling city streets, where a journalist prepares to meet the heroes in person. As the members of Byakuren, led by Haruto, make their entrance, they are met with thunderous applause from the gathered crowds who cheer in celebration of their triumph. Sat steps forward to interview the heroes, congratulating them on their victory over the Demon King. Speaking on behalf of the team, Haruto expresses his gratitude, emphasizing that their success was only possible thanks to the support they received from people all over the world. Sat then asks how they managed to achieve such incredible strength, especially as S-rank hunters. However, the entire team suddenly falls silent, as if unsure how to respond. After a brief pause, Haruto regains his composure and simply states that their power is the result of their rigorous daily training. Later, the scene shifts to a different location where Isaac laughs sarcastically at Haruto's response, commenting that his mention of daily training was nothing more than a joke. Chikara, chuckling, adds that Haruto wasn't entirely wrong. Aya, the sorceress, then interjects, insisting that they do in fact train hard every day. Meanwhile, Perot, the team's alchemist, smirks and remarks that, in the end, this is their job, and there's no escaping it. Haruto smiles, acknowledging the importance of their mission before turning to his teammates and asking if they think otherwise. However, he suddenly shifts his focus, addressing 2 individuals in the room as monsters. At that moment, the perspective changes, revealing 2 figures chained to the wall, a young man and a girl. Their tired, hollow expressions suggest they have been trapped in this place for a long time. The young man is soon identified as Makoto, while the girl beside him is his sister Minori. Haruto and the rest of the team step closer, but neither sibling responds. Breaking the silence, Haruto comments on how stubborn some beings can be. He then coldly acknowledges that, thanks to these 2, he and his team have grown stronger, and that their power continues to increase. As he moves even closer, expressing his twisted gratitude, Makoto suddenly lashes out with a powerful sword strike. Everyone is momentarily stunned as Haruto effortlessly blocks the attack, demonstrating complete control and unwavering confidence. It becomes evident that, in this world, strength and experience are not merely obtained by battling ordinary foes. The true path to power lies in fighting specific adversaries. However, there exists an exception. Defeating entities that do not perish naturally can drastically enhance a warrior's abilities. Moments later, Makoto regains his stance as if nothing had happened. Haruto, still grinning, rises to his feet, satisfied with both his newfound strength and the progress he has made. As he wipes his blade clean, he looks at Makoto and remarks that his unique ability to recover from injuries grants them limitless opportunities to sharpen their skills. Meanwhile, Makoto and Minori appear completely drained, their bodies struggling to endure the relentless cycle. Chikara steps forward, unleashing his overwhelming strength upon their opponents. In mere moments, he delivers a devastating blow to one of them, leaving little room for resistance. Without hesitation, Aya joins the fray, conjuring a fierce wave of fire that engulfs Minori, weakening her significantly. Despite their exhaustion, both siblings eventually regain their strength. Seeing this, Paru approaches Minori once again, pushing her into yet another challenge to test her endurance. Meanwhile, Isik turns his focus back to Makoto, driving him to the brink of his limits in combat. Once everyone reaches the power levels they had aimed for, Haruto announces that their training for the day has been a success. However, Chikara remains unsatisfied, declaring that it still isn't enough. He is determined to become even stronger. Aya sighs, calling him obsessed with power and admitting that she is completely drained. Seiya chimes in, agreeing that he too has had enough for the day and needs some time to unwind. Just then they notice Perot seated in front of a computer, visibly uneasy. When asked what's troubling him, he reveals that he has recently struggled to gather information as efficiently as before. Seiya advises him to take it easy, reminding him that he has been working hard and should enjoy himself once in a while. Perot then turns back to Minori, preparing to subject her to yet another test. However, he suddenly hesitates, realizing that everything has started to feel repetitive and dull. Haruto pauses for a moment before admitting that monotony has set in for all of them. His gaze shifts toward Minori, still chained before them, lost in thought as she contemplates her situation. After a brief silence, Haruto steps closer to Peru and suggests that there may still be something they haven't tried, an unexplored aspect of her abilities. Perot's eyes widen in astonishment, as though hearing a stroke of genius. He grins, praising Haruto's insight, and acknowledges that while his focus has always been on combat, they have never considered alternative ways to refine their skills. Determined, he turns to Aya, requesting her magical assistance in this new experiment. Without hesitation, she agrees and begins chanting a spell, intending to gauge its effects. However, just as the spell takes form, Minori's expression shifts. She suddenly appears fully aware of her surroundings and of what they are planning. At that moment, Seiya interrupts, suggesting they take a break before declaring his desire to participate as well. Aya chuckles, remarking that it seems everyone enjoys a challenge. However, her amusement quickly turns to surprise when Haruto gives her an unexpected order. He tells her to release Makoto from his restraints. Confused, Aya questions his reasoning. Haruto merely smiles, his eyes gleaming with intrigue, and responds cryptically. Watching someone endure such trials while being powerless to intervene is fascinating. He then steps back, his voice laced with anticipation. "This," he says, "is going to be quite the spectacle." Without hesitation, Aya follows Haruto's orders, and in an instant, Makoto finds himself unshackled. The sudden rush of freedom is overwhelming, but the moment he regains control over his body, he sees his sister being taken away. Panic surges through him as he tries to leap to his feet and chase after them, his voice ringing out in desperation, demanding that they stop. But before he can take a single step, Aya's magic surges forth, binding him in place once more. His struggles are futile as an invisible force tightens around him, leaving him unable to move. Haruto watches the scene unfold, his laughter cold and mocking. He approaches Makoto and, with a smirk, tells him that tonight he will witness everything from an entirely new perspective. With a casual yet cruel tone, he explains that sacred magic, unlike fire or conventional attacks, has a distinctive effect. Unlike the wounds he has suffered before, these restraints will suppress his ability to recover, leaving him completely vulnerable. Makoto clenches his fists, frustration and fury surging through him. His voice shakes as he swears that he will never forgive them, that he will find a way to put an end to all of this. But before he can finish speaking, his words are abruptly cut short. Haruto's blade presses against his throat, silencing him in an instant. Haruto looms over him, his voice eerily calm as he tells Makoto that silence is his only option tonight. "This is not an evening for words," he states, "but for observation." He then adds that if Makoto is looking for someone to blame, he need only look at himself. Makoto, powerless to do anything but watch, hears Haruto instructing Peru that it is time to leave. They have a long day ahead, including crucial meetings abroad. Peru nods, mentioning that he too has unfinished business to attend to. Haruto chuckles as he exits the cell, making a mocking remark about being the only one who actually worries about such matters. Peru merely shrugs, replying that everyone has their own way of thinking. Before departing, they ensure that no additional restraints are placed on the siblings. Haruto dismisses the idea, remarking that even if Minori were to wake now, she wouldn't be able to escape. He instructs Peru to make sure the cell is properly secured before leaving. As silence settles over the cold prison, Makoto remains on the ground, still trapped by the magic that prevents him from moving. A sharp, unrelenting pain courses through him. Just then, he feels a hand gripping the sword embedded in his body. The pain intensifies as the blade is pulled free, and to his horror, he realizes that it was Minori who removed it. But what shocks him even more is what happens next. Instead of dropping the weapon, she lifts it, turning the blade toward herself. Makoto's heart pounds in terror as he shouts for her to stop, pleading with her not to hurt herself. But Minori's expression is one of sheer anguish. Overwhelmed by everything she has endured, her emotions consume her. Trembling, she repeatedly murmurs that she can't take it anymore. Her voice cracks as she begs her older brother, her only remaining hope, to find a way to end her suffering. At that moment, Makoto recalls Haruto's words about the excruciating pain caused by his suppressed regeneration. A realization dawns upon him. If their bodies, cursed with immortality, can only regenerate under specific conditions, then perhaps there is a way to set her free. But first, he must act. She hesitated for a brief moment before finally bringing the blade down on her own arm, pain searing through her body. Overwhelmed by a deep, emotional torment, she muttered another apology for the suffering she was causing. However, Makoto reassured her, insisting that she was doing the right thing. He then instructed her to strike his heart next, claiming that doing so would allow him to return even stronger. Driven by desperation to restore her brother, Minori forced herself to continue, plunging the weapon into his chest. But before she could process what had just happened, an immense surge of energy erupted from Makoto's body, shaking the room. Her shock only deepened when a sudden notification appeared before her eyes. Her level had increased. At that moment, Makoto's wounds vanished completely as his body restored itself. He stood once again fully healed. Still struggling to comprehend what had just occurred, Minori asked why her level had increased. It was then that Makoto finally pieced together the truth. Minori, realizing the same thing, turned to him with an intense expression. "You understand what I'm thinking, don't you?" she asked. But Makoto immediately rejected her conclusion. "No," he said firmly. "You can't do this." However, Minori clarified. She wasn't suggesting that he kill her. Instead, she proposed something far more sinister, using each other as tools to bring destruction upon their enemies. A burning desire for revenge lit up in her eyes as she declared that they would make everyone pay for what they had done. Makoto wavered at first, but the memories of everything they had endured resurfaced in his mind. Gritting his teeth, he ultimately agreed to her plan. There was no more hesitation. It would begin immediately. And so, the two siblings embarked on their gruesome cycle, killing one another repeatedly, taking turns with each strike. First, Makoto ended Minori's life. Then, Minori returned the favor. This endless exchange continued over and over again, a relentless loop of pain and suffering. But with each death, they grew stronger, their power increasing at an unnatural rate. Their torment became the foundation of their vengeance. The scene then shifts back to the beginning, to Haruto's team within the Bakuen Guild. At that time, Taro was known as an S-rank member, responsible for carrying the team's equipment. He had a reputation for being reserved, speaking only when necessary. One day, Naruto entered the room and casually remarked on Taro's unwavering dedication to his work. Taro was surprised. Haruto had gone out of his way just to tell him that? But Haruto wasn't finished. He continued, stating that Taro's job was fascinating in ways he might not yet understand. Then, with an air of mystery, he asked Taro a question. Would you be interested in dissecting something even more intriguing? Intrigued, Taro followed him down a quiet hallway to an isolated chamber, a part of the guild rarely accessed by others. Before entering, Haruto had already gathered the entire team and posed a question to them. Do you desire fame and glory? They were confused at first, unsure of what he truly meant. Seeing their uncertainty, Haruto elaborated. Starting from that moment, they had the opportunity to step into the spotlight, to carve their names into history. He assured them that the path ahead was wide open, and the future waiting for them was one of unparalleled renown. No one had ever reached such a place before. However, there was a price to pay. Once inside, there would be no escape from the darkness. After revealing this truth, he turned to them and asked if they still wished to follow him on the path to greatness he was offering. Chikara, without a moment of hesitation, declared that they were all by his side, fully committed to the same goal. Chi, trusting Chikara's words, nodded in agreement. With that, Aruto moved forward, revealing a hidden passage that led to a staircase descending into the depths below. He urged them to follow, assuring them that what awaited would lead them to a future filled with recognition and prestige. Without looking back, he took the first step downward, and the others followed closely behind. As they moved, Taro admitted that he had never known of this underground space before. Chikara speculated that it might have once been used by the guild as a prison for its adversaries. At the bottom of the staircase, Aruto approached another door, this one electronic, requiring the fingerprints of all 5 fingers of his hand to unlock. The rest of the group hesitated, uncertain about what they were about to witness. As the door slid open, the sight before them sent a shock through the entire team. Inside the chamber were Makoto and his sister, Minori, both bound and held captive. The group immediately reacted, expressing their concerns and warning Aruto that this was reckless. However, he reassured them, telling them not to worry. He then revealed a shocking truth. Although Makoto and Minori appeared human, their blood was different from that of ordinary people. Approaching the 2 prisoners, Aruto disclosed their identity. They belonged to the Immortal clan, a lineage long thought to have perished. Without hesitation, he drew his sword and struck Makoto, slicing off half of his face as if it meant nothing. The group gasped in horror, but Aruto remained unfazed. Calmly, he explained that Makoto's body would regenerate the lost tissue in moments. Still in disbelief, the team questioned him. Was it possible that the Immortal clan still existed? Fascinated but bewildered, they struggled to understand how this revelation connected to the promise of glory that Aruto had spoken of. At that moment, he raised his phone and instructed them to look at the screen. The device displayed an application, a ranking system that had existed since he first joined the guild. The app analyzed and categorized a person's strength and magical abilities, determining their overall combat level. He went on to explain that their guild belonged to the highest classification, a rank that dictated the caliber of warriors within it. If his level was under 20, he wouldn't be able to join her. However, what shocked the team was that Aruto's level had now reached 50. He went on to explain that the usual method of increasing one's level was through fighting and defeating monsters, but this was dangerous. If a fighter wasn't careful, they could lose their life. He then clarified that they could use these individuals for this purpose. At that moment, Minori was stabbed in the stomach with a sword, the blade piercing through her body. Looking at her through his eyes, Aruto told the team that now they could easily raise their levels. The first to react with excitement was Taro, who exclaimed how incredible this opportunity was. He quickly drew a knife from his pocket and approached Minori, expressing his eagerness to understand the human body's structure and weak points. He stabbed her with the knife and asked how she felt before continuing to stab her repeatedly in various parts of her body, questioning her about the sensation of having her body pierced. Afterward, he realized that his level had indeed increased, and a wave of overwhelming joy flooded him. He then approached Minori again, removing the blindfold from her eyes and face, admiring her beauty and expressing his immense happiness. He asked her to tell him more about herself. Following that, he returned to his violent actions, tearing into her body with a frenzied excitement, wondering if she could survive being poisoned, anesthetized, or if her brain could be separated from her body. He also wondered how long she could stay alive if her organs were offered as food for insects. Witnessing this scene, Seiya remarked to the siblings that they truly resembled immortal monsters. He and the rest of the team laughed, unsure of what they had just witnessed. The scene then transitions back to the present day. It's the day the team departs for the interviews that Haruto mentioned, arriving at the airport. Chikara is dressed in formal attire, expressing his surprise at being part of the interview. Iya responds with a question, asking if muscular individuals like them feel uncomfortable in formal clothing. Meanwhile, Seiya is observing his surroundings and inquires about Taro's whereabouts. Naruto responds, suggesting that Taro is probably with his doll fiancé, continuing his latest experiment. Seiya comments that Taro seems full of energy. Later, back at the guild building, Taro returns to continue his work. He enters his cell, excitement filling him as he approaches the door. He opens it and heads toward Minori, greeting her with a smile. "I've finally returned to see my doll fiancé," he says, apologizing for leaving her alone. However, his smile fades when he suddenly notices Makoto holding a weapon, ready to use it. To kill his sister Minori, it was clear that they had been carrying out this process since the previous night. Taro shouted, demanding to know what Makoto was doing and begging him not to kill his doll fiancé. He feared that if she died, the potential outcome of the experiment performed on her the previous night, referring to the pregnancy Haruto had mentioned, would be lost. Suddenly, the siblings stood before him, completely different from the fragile state they had been in the night before. They had changed dramatically. It became clear that when a fighter defeats a creature of equal or lesser strength, they gain only a limited amount of experience. However, if the creature is stronger, the fighter's experience increases significantly and quickly. As the siblings continued to kill each other repeatedly, they surpassed one another's levels with each cycle, causing their power to rise rapidly. This rapid growth in strength was what had transformed their bodies and muscles in such a short amount of time. Taro, processing what he was witnessing, was overtaken by fear and began to retreat. He tried to flee the room, unable to comprehend what had happened to these creatures. He kept backing away until he reached the stairs, muttering that something had to be done immediately. Turning to face them, he said he didn't understand how they had freed themselves and acquired such power, but he warned them that escaping was not an option. He continued retreating until he reached a switch labeled Dangerous, which he quickly pressed. At that moment, another door opened, revealing a massive beast standing beside it. Taro claimed they had no chance of escaping, and that he and Shara would kill them. It was then revealed that the seemingly docile chimera he had intended to feed was actually the very creature that had tortured Makoto and Minori. However, Makoto and Minori showed no fear. Instead, they decided that it was time to take revenge for everything they had endured at the hands of these monsters. Makoto stepped forward, positioning himself in front of the beast, while Taro stayed behind it, directing it towards Makoto and Minori in an attempt to intimidate them. Minori's shock deepened when he expressed his curiosity about what kind of offspring would result from the union of the Chimera and a member of the Immortal tribe. At that moment, Makoto raised a barrier between Minori and the others, glaring at Taro with intense fury, declaring that he would kill him. But Taro just laughed hysterically again, daring Makoto to try, adding that he was nothing but food for them. The fury of the chimera then reached its peak. The creature charged at Makoto with incredible speed. It struck him, revealing that its tail was actually a giant serpent. Makoto was taken aback by the immense strength and speed of Shera, which he had not anticipated. Suddenly, hands wielding a knife appeared, stabbing into his body, an attack orchestrated by Taro, who was using the same technique he had previously used to treat Seiya and Chikara. However, he couldn't see Makoto clearly, so he was attacking using a partial teleportation technique, warning him not to try escaping. It was then revealed that when a person's level increases, they can acquire unique abilities. These abilities vary from person to person, depending on their combat role, experience, and origin. Since Taro was responsible for various tasks, he had acquired multiple abilities, including food manipulation, pharmacology, monster training, and assassination. The ability he was using now was portal creation between two distinct locations, not only useful for transferring objects, but also for assassinations. This rare ability had become available to him due to the combat skills he had gained from defeating the Demon King. Now, he had enough strength to qualify for a rank S guild. Makoto found himself trapped between the chimera on one side and Taro's invisible attacks on the other. Suddenly, the chimera's serpentine tail wrapped around his leg and lifted him upside down into the air, while at the same time, Taro struck both of his arms. The chimera then attacked with its massive claws, making Makoto's body seem small in comparison. Taro laughed even more. Taro once again mocked Makoto, saying that no matter how much his level increased, he would always remain weak, merely possessing a regeneration ability. He was nothing more than a source of food to help them grow stronger and gain more experience. At that moment, Minori watched the events unfold, gripped by fear for her brother, who was facing both the monstrous chimera and the insane Taro. The chimera's fury reached its peak when Taro told Makoto that survival was now impossible for him. He then ordered the chimera to devour him. As soon as Taro gave the order, the chimera charged at Makoto and began attacking him. However, after consuming part of Makoto's body, Taro realized that the chimera seemed exhausted and soon stopped eating. Moments later, he was stunned to see the chimera collapse on the ground, a green substance oozing from its mouth, its body still next to Makoto, who was lying in a pool of his own blood. Taro rushed over to the chimera to check what had happened, only to be shocked when Makoto suddenly stood up and told him that he had been trying to avoid this outcome, but now there was no other choice. It was then that Taro realized Makoto had regenerated the limbs and parts of his body that had been torn off or consumed. Makoto then informed Taro that he himself had killed the chimera. Filled with rage and the pain of losing his beloved creature, Taro attacked in a blind fury, stabbing Makoto repeatedly while shouting for him to die. However, Makoto calmly responded, "If you lose too much blood, you'll die." Taro froze in confusion at his words and then noticed a wound on his hand, covered with a green substance he had seen dripping from the chimera's mouth before its death. Suddenly, Taro collapsed in front of Makoto, screaming in agony and shouting that his body was burning. At that moment, it became clear that as Makoto's level had increased, he had gained a new ability, Poison Infliction. This ability turned his body into a lethal toxin. He then informed Taro that his own blood had become a deadly poison that was now consuming him. Taro refused to believe it, insisting that members of his tribe couldn't acquire additional abilities beyond regeneration without extensive training. However, Makoto told him that he had never needed training, reminding him that he had already been poisoned by Taro hundreds of times before. He then grabbed Taro's own knife, made a cut in his hand, and let his blood drip onto Taro, saying he was just—
And that's a wrap for today's video. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a like.